Hey guys, what's up? This right here is the ASUS ZenBook UM431, which is a pretty interesting laptop. I say interesting because it is powered by the Ryzen 3rd Gen Ryzen 5 3500U, which is kind of an older CPU right now, considering that the Ryzen 4th generation is already out. That said, a lot of you guys have been asking whether this laptop makes a lot of sense to buy right now, considering 4th gen Ryzen laptops are still on their way to the market. And with a price tag of about 60k, it surely sounds like a good deal. But having used this as my primary for the last 3 months, I surely have a lot of thoughts. So grab a box of popcorn and stay tuned while I tell you my in-depth review of the ASUS ZenBook 14. Let's get started. Okay, now first things first, the design. And I have to tell you, I genuinely love this design. The brushed metallic finish is super premium, and while it is kind of prone to scratches in the long run, from a distance they would get camouflaged inside the finish, so that's not a big deal. Now the laptop also comes with the company's Ergo Lift hinge, which to be honest is my favorite design element on any laptop. See, it not only makes the laptop's keyboard a little more ergonomic to use, it also gives it more headroom for air below it to enter easily and make the laptop's frame look a bit slimmer as well. Now in terms of ports, on the left side you get a barrel plug, an HDMI port, a USB 3.1 port, a USB Type-C port and some LED indicators. Over to the right side, you have the USB 2.0 port followed by a 3.5mm headphone jack and a full-sized SD card slot. That SD card slot appeals to a lot of users, someone like me, cause whether you're a part-time content creator or just someone who likes to click a lot of photos on their DSLRs, transferring data from your SD card to the laptop is so much more convenient. That said, I will still have to call out ASUS for not including USB Type PD. I mean, you can easily charge your laptop with USB Type-C. I just don't understand why they have not brought it to this laptop. Yes, it was launched late in 2019, but it still could have featured USB PD. Now the laptop itself feels quite premium, and with a weight of almost 1.4 kgs, it's quite lightweight as well. Also, a lot of you guys have been asking about the 100 usage, and it's kind of interesting here. So initially, if you can just manage to somehow give it the initial edge, yes, it does support one-handed opening. But the fact is that since you require that little support from the other hand to hold it back and kind of lift it up, it doesn't really qualify, at least in my consideration. So yeah. Now moving on to the display. That is one aspect that has always set apart the VivoBooks and the ZenBooks. I mean, obviously there is the more premium price tag and the more premium design language, but VivoBooks displays have always had a yellowish tint. The ZenBook, especially this one right here, has a pretty good panel. ASUS claims that the panel here offers 100% sRGB coverage, and while there is some light bleed on the corners, that claim is pretty much on point. Now the viewing angles are good, and the full HD 60Hz panel is surprisingly good for lightweight gaming as well. It's not great, but as far as ultrabooks go, this is one of the best displays out there for sure. Now with a screen to body ratio of just 86%, there is obviously room for a forehead which can fit in the webcam as well. The webcam here is pretty much, well, it sucks. I mean, it gets the job done and we all need webcams right now, so it's fine. It can get your job done for Zoom calls or Google Meet calls and everything. But yeah, it's nothing flashy and it's not great or anything. But yeah, we have a video on how you can use your Android device as a webcam for your laptop. So if you're interested into that, personally I am, and I would definitely recommend that you do check that video out from the link in the description box below. Now below the display, there's the keyboard, which is probably my favorite part of this laptop. ASUS has made good use of the space available to them. The hotkeys are small and simple, while the normal keys are well spaced out. Even the arrow keys, despite the half and half concept, does feel good to use, and I had no worries there. Now I'll admit that over the past couple of years, I have used ASUS laptops the most, considering that they do roll out a lot of laptops in very short period of time. So yeah, I was able to adapt to the overall keyboard layout quite fast. But even for new time users, the keyboard layout on the ZenBook 14 isn't that hard to get used to. The one thing that you need to remember is your function keys and hotkeys are basically the same keys. So while ASUS gives you the option to switch modes between them, I prefer keeping them on the hotkey mode for easy control of my volume and brightness. The only downside to that is pressing an extra function button while pressing Alt F4 whenever I want to close an app, so there's that. That said, I was able to get a score of 72 words per minute with 100% accuracy on the ZenBook 14, which isn't far behind of my 74 words per minute average on my primary driver. So far so good, right? Now here's the part that is not so good and kind of irritate you to the point where you're super frustrated. See, below this beautiful and exciting keyboard is this touchpad, and if this was a gaming laptop, I would have been fine with this kind of a touchpad. But for an ultrabook where 99% of the time I will be using the touchpad, I just don't know how this thing exists. Like, seriously. Okay, so where do I even begin? The surface area is small. The surface in itself is recessed. The gestures don't work half of the time. And to be honest, it goes to a point where it just stops working. Like literally, I have to close the lid and then open it back up after a couple of seconds to make the touchpad bring back to life. Now it could be a driver issue, but I've updated it to the latest drivers as offered on ASUS's website, but nothing works. Yes, it has precision drivers, so gestures are technically supported, but half of the time they just don't work, especially the 3-finger gestures. I mean, they're just a pain to use, and like I said, I've used it for so long. After getting fed up, I just started using my mouse with it. Now in the corner, there's also a fingerprint scanner that helps with Windows Hello. But with an accuracy of 3 out of 5 times, I don't really like it. It's fine when it works, but when it doesn't, I just resort to the good old pin. Okay, so that was a part that I did not like. But coming back to things that I do like about this laptop, and I have to talk about the audio. So most of the ultrabooks out in the market that you'll find have those bottom firing speakers which have all those fancy brandings, but they all suck. I mean, they literally are that bad. This right here, let's just forget about the Harman Kardon branding for now, but the speakers on this thing are actually pretty good. I mean, to the point that for normal YouTube videos or normal music consumption, they are pretty good. Yes, there's no significant bass here, but for most use cases, they do get quite loud and should get the job done. That said, if you're planning on watching a movie or enjoying those extended music sessions, may I recommend using a pair of wired headphones. You have the 3.5mm headphone jack, or if you're someone like me, you can just use the Type-C port for media transfer as well. Coming to the software, the laptop comes with Windows 10 Home Edition, which is fairly obvious. Now, as per the Amazon listing, the laptop is supposed to come with Office 2019, but our unit here came with a 30-day trial of Office 365. Go figure. Also, there's the McAfee antivirus if you care for that sort of a thing, and some benefits that are offered for Dropbox inside the My ASUS app. So in terms of bloatware, there isn't a lot apart from that My ASUS app. At least that is what meets the eye. However, ASUS is doing a lot of stuff behind the curtains, which kind of affects your performance. Let's talk about that. So our unit here comes equipped with a Ryzen 5 3500U, which is a 4-core 8-thread CPU coupled with Vega 8 graphics, 8GB of dual-channel RAM and a 512GB NVMe SSD. See, when I say normal usage, I'm talking about web browsing on Chrome with about 8 to 10 tabs open, listening to Spotify and doing some light image editing on Photoshop or maybe even Paint.net. For that part, the laptop works fine, except there's a little asterisk over there. It works fine when it is plugged in. See, the base clock speed of the processor is supposed to be 2.1 GHz with turboing up to 3.9 GHz, which sounds good. Except that when you unplug it, the base frequency drops down to as low as 1.2 GHz, and it just does not turbo anywhere, even to the 2.1 GHz that it should be, which is baffling. And let's not forget, if you're a Chrome user, that 8GB of RAM will never suffice. I mean, even while having just 8 tabs open, I was already using up 6GB of my RAM. Something's going on over there. And let me assure you, that's not just Chrome. I am pretty sure ASUS is doing something in the background, as we've seen on a lot of AMD powered ASUS laptops actually. Now when plugged in, the chipset is a powerhouse. And I mean that. Benchmarks are decent, and pretty much what you would expect with this. Even for gaming, the Vega 8 does not disappoint. You can play the occasional game of Rocket League or CSGO on this with 720p resolution going up to 100 FPS. AAA titles can be played if you consider 30 FPS as your base requirement. I don't, but for an Ultrabook, that's pretty much the standard benchmark and the expectation that you can get. But anyway, that's the main point. Ryzen chipsets have always been power hungry, and when plugged in, they're great, but on battery life, they kind of suffer. Now, it's not like it's unusable, like switch to Microsoft Edge and use web clients instead of using dedicated apps and launching different processes. Like for me, I was using Edge browser for my web browsing along with web clients for both Spotify and Slack. And I was using just about 4 or 4.5 GB of my RAM, which is fine. And the laptop was pretty good and was offering decent battery life as well, which I'll talk about. But yeah, the whole point is, are you okay with shifting to those levels of performance? That is something to keep in mind. Internally, there's not a lot to talk about. The Wi-Fi card and the NVMe SSD are the only thing that can be replaced. The RAM is soldered on and there's no expandable slot as well. Bummer, cause with the 8GB of RAM that's clocked to 2400 MHz, I would have liked to see an expandable slot or a bigger memory option, especially since we all know how extra RAM can boost up the performance of a Ryzen CPU. I mean, there is still dual channel, so that's good, but 8GB of RAM just isn't enough. You do get a large heat spreader with a single heat pipe that goes from the GPU to the CPU to a pretty big fan that does keep the thermals in check. In my testing, I was able to hit the 90-degree mark, but that was only after 38 minutes of rigorous benchmarking. So that's a great point for an Ultrabook. For normal activity, this averages around the 48-50 degree mark when on your lap and around the 40 to 45 degree mark when on a desk that allows for ample cooling headroom. Now the major portion of this laptop is occupied by the 47 watt battery, which the company claims should last you about 12 hours. More like 4.5 hours. In a more realistic use case, obviously. Now you can obviously switch to a power saving mode and maybe you can squeeze about 5 hours and 10 minutes out of this thing, but nowhere near the 12-hour mark. Trust me, Ryzen is a power hungry CPU and this thing is never going to last more than 6 hours for sure. But yeah, so even if it does not last you an entire day of workload, you can still carry the charger. The charger is pretty lightweight and at least you can fit it anywhere inside your bag without having to worry about the extra pain. So for about 60k, the laptop is looking like a good option on paper. My first piece of advice would be to fresh install a copy of Windows on this to basically just remove all that ASUS recommended stuff. You know, ASUS recommended power options, ASUS recommended different variable modes. Just remove all of that. You don't need that. Windows is decently optimized to squeeze best out of this Ryzen chipset, especially if you're interested into squeezing the maximum performance out of this laptop. That said, how many of you guys will actually be willing to do that on a new laptop that you buy? A lot of you guys are not comfortable with formatting Windows, especially when you have to make use of the pre-installed BIOS key and skip all the OEM data that's installed there. That process can be tedious, and I seriously don't see a lot of guys using that, especially when just a couple of months later, the Ryzen 5 4600U and the 4500U will be coming to the market. These are 6-core chipsets with 6 threads and 12 threads respectively. And to be honest, these chipsets are going to offer much better performance and slightly better battery life than what we have here. So for 60k, although the laptop is good, if you are really in the market and really in the need to buy a laptop right now, yes, this is a good option. But if you can wait, seriously wait for the new Ryzen 4th gen mobile chipsets to come, because obviously ASUS will be one of the first ones to launch new laptops with it, and that would be a much better option. Obviously, there are the new 10th gen Intel chipsets there as well, but once again, I would wait till the Ryzen comes out and then we can do a proper comparison and then finally decide what a better laptop for you would be. And with that, we come to the end of this video. If you like this review, in-depth kind of stuff, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon to make sure you tune in for all upcoming videos. Till then, this is Varun from Guiding Tech, and I'll see you in the next one.